Good morning and welcome back to Cyclopedia. As most of you know by now, I'm back in Taiwan. So for my first video, I thought I'd reflect on how I'm finding things back here after 6 years in Singapore in Now, the one thing that has really caught my eye since returning to Taiwan is the number of Teslas that I've seen driving around. It really is a novelty for me, as I never saw a single Tesla all the time that I was in Singapore. Now, I know I'm a bit late to the game, but I had my first ride in a Tesla. It was a taxi the other day, and I have to say it was really cool. Cars like this really are the future, and it's great to see Taiwan embracing it. And I will definitely be tempted to buy a Tesla when we get our next vehicle. Another thing I'm happy about is being able to get back out into the mountains again, as this is probably the thing I've missed most since the pandemic put paid to my hiking trips to Malaysia and beyond. I'm not going to complain too much because I really enjoyed exploring all the nooks and crannies in Singapore. But for me, there's no substitute for a long weekend in nature and the stunning views Taiwan and its mountains have to offer. Also, biking is back on the agenda big time. I'll be honest and say that besides my Brompton adventures, I had become a bit fed up with cycling in Singapore, partly because all of my biking buddies had left, and also because I'd become bored of riding the same old roads, namely the Changi Airport Loop. But that will all change now, as I have a new toy, which means I'm free to get out and about and explore the hills of Hsinchu and beyond, although I will have to wear a mask. Since getting back, I've also enjoyed reintroducing my taste buds to a couple of traditional Taiwanese breakfast items that I could never find in Singapore, namely Shendojang and Xiaobing Jiadan. I used to eat these things regularly before we moved to Singapore, and it's been great to taste them once more. I'm also looking forward to eating a few other local dishes which I haven't had for a while: guabao, hu jiao bing, and my all-time favorite Taiwanese ghetto food, mi fen tang. One thing that you don't fully appreciate until you live in a neutral country is having your loved ones close by. For my wife and I, living in Singapore meant that we had no family nearby for either of us, and it really does make a difference. You feel like something is missing from your life. I get on really well with my in-laws, so it's great that now we're back in Taiwan, we can go visit with them and enjoy some family time together. It really is something that you don't think about until it's not there. Singapore is a very international place. When it comes to food, you can basically buy anything that you want, no matter where the country of origin. Indian, Mexican, German, they have everything. Unfortunately, the same cannot be said about here in Taiwan. It's especially true when it comes to buying spices. I really got into cooking Southeast Asian food when I was in Singapore. Beef rendang, homemade sambal, several Myanmar dishes, and also Indian dishes such as this butter chicken. But buying spices in bulk and ingredients such as galangal, tamarind, and even something as simple as coconut flakes here is quite a challenge. I've been busy trying to restock my spice cupboard since returning, and it was almost impossible to buy things such as coriander and cumin seeds here in Hsinchu, so I ended up having to order them online from a store in Taipei. I really miss the Mustafa Center. Cheers. Another annoying thing I've discovered since returning is the tendency of Taiwanese people to stare at the Waigwaran. It used to happen before we left, but it rarely happened in Singapore, so I'd forgotten how irritating it can be. It's particularly bad whenever we go out as a family. Taiwanese mother, Western father, and 2 mixed kids. Manna from heaven for the gawkers. I guess it's worse because we're in Hsinchu, because there's not as many foreigners here as in Taipei. I know that I'm devilishly handsome. I have been compared to Mel Gibson and Jason Statham in the past, but I'm just a normal person. My family are also normal people, and we don't like to be stared at. Now, I don't swear much. Maybe my kids will say different, but there's one thing about being back here in Taiwan that makes the air around me turn blue, and that is the behavior of some motorists. I'm back on the road now after a hiatus of 6 years while living in Singapore. The price of a car there made driving a luxury I couldn't afford. But it's like I've never been away. The behavior of certain drivers here is reckless to say the least, and in some cases just downright dangerous. Yes, I'm talking about you, the BMW driver who swerves across all 4 lanes of the highway at high speed like he's auditioning for Fast and Furious 10. Or the scooter driver that zips out of a side road without even a glance at the oncoming traffic. Even worse, however, is being a pedestrian. You literally have to take your life into your own hands when crossing the road in Taiwan, as some people think stopping at a red light is optional. Another thing about Taiwan, rather than ugly, I like to call it unaesthetic, is the random, haphazard and run-down appearance of many of its buildings. You know what I'm talking about. Stuff like this, and this, and this. There is not a lot of this in Singapore, as most of the structures there consist of pretty colonial buildings, landed houses of the wealthy, or modern post-1980 HDBs and condos. So being back in Taiwan, one of the first things you notice is the lack of conformity in the architecture. And although it may not be the prettiest thing in the world, I kind of like it because in a strange way it adds character to the place. But maybe that's just me. And finally, a subject that could be in any one of the 3 categories. Recycling. The good? Well, Taiwan is known as one of the world leaders when it comes to recycling. And as a staunch environmentalist, recycling your trash is one small way in which I can help out. The bad? Well, previously we lived in a community that had recycling centres, which meant that you could take your trash down and dispose of it at any time of the day. Our new place doesn't have this, so now we're having to chase the garbage truck twice a day. The ugly? Well, only when you have to dispose of all your own garbage by hand do you realise just how much you produce. It really is horrifying. This is just from half a day. Note to self, must do more to reduce waste. Alright, so that's about it for today's video, and before all you keyboard warriors get warmed up and ready to attack, just remember these are my own personal reflections on life back in Taiwan after a few weeks. I actually love it here and I always have, and I'm very happy to be back. So as I said, that's it. If you enjoyed this video, then don't forget to give me a like, and you can always subscribe if you want to. It's free and you can unsubscribe at any time. And if you're really keen on catching my adventures, which are usually on a Saturday morning, you can click the bell for notifications. Next week I'll be back on the road exploring my new hometown, so stay tuned for that and I'll catch you then. In the meantime, take it easy. Over and out.